Let's talk about my top 10 cards in Attack on Titan. I try and do this video around pre-release weekend of every single set. It's late enough to where I've done some sort of testing, but it's early enough to where I still have some bold takes, and I'll have some hits and some misses as we go. Before I get into the top 10, let me explain my criteria. First off, a card must be universally good. I don't want cards that are too niche and only select characters can play them, unless those select characters are very, very strong in the meta. For example, Black Abyss and Girl Power, very, very strong in Toga 3 and Amajiki, not as strong in other characters. But hey, Toga 3 and Amajiki, these are like some of the best characters in the game. They're going to be everywhere at major tournaments. Therefore, Black Abyss fits the bill. But on other cards, I really want to make sure that lots of different characters, lots of different strategies can play these cards pretty well. So Attack on Titan cards that don't fit this, that I actually think are really good, are examples like this. We have Waylay, 4 4. They remove all their momentum face down, and then it comes back. So against an Amajiki, this would be very, very powerful. But in a lot of other matchups, this is just a 4 4. It's not doing that much. Or Rallied Assault. This actually can be played in a lot of different decks, but it is a 2-check, and you have to be really, really strong to make up for being a 2-check. Just being a 2-check means that you're going to be cut from 90% of possible decks. Also, it wants to be played as like the third or fourth attack in an attack string, and then it wants to clear the card pool, making way for more attacks to be played. I'm not sure how many characters are going to be able to consistently find that number of attacks. Like one of the best Attack on Titan characters for this card, I think, is like Big Mouth Titan. We're automatically getting the momentum to use for it. We can discard a card to pick up a card from our momentum. Hopefully that's an attack so we can keep on going. But for the vast majority of characters, I think this is going to be pretty difficult to play. And then Shrewd Observations. After you sacrifice one or more foundations, this attack gets -1 speed. It's very similar to like Incubating from Girl Power, where, hey, we just have to remove a card from our discard pile for -1 speed. That's a very, very low cost for everybody. But sacrificing a foundation on defense is actually pretty difficult unless you're a character like Irwin or Inasa. But in most other characters, your foundations that say sacrifice a foundation, they're typically like offense focused. I'm thinking like Death Maneuvers, Immortal Shapeshifter, and they're not so much defensive. There is a death card that like, but you have to remove your foundations instead of sacrificing it, which means to destroy. So these are like very, very powerful cards in Attack on Titan, but they're a little too niche for me to put into my top 10. My second criteria is that it has to be broken. I'm not just looking for good cards. I'm looking for broken cards. Okay, what's the difference between a good card and a broken card? Well, like a good card would be like draw 1 card. That's a good ability. Good stats would be like 5-10 on a 5-diff. That's perfectly fine. That's going to see play. But a broken ability is we are cheating somehow. We are cheating a fundamental game mechanic. Think about like ignoring progressive difficulty is a pretty common one. Repeated 100% smash. Hey, I get to ready 4 things. Crow and Frog doesn't count towards progressive difficulty. That card got banned for that. I get to look at my rival's hand would be an example of a broken ability. I get to snap some sort of resource, right? A free build from my discard pile, immediately getting momentum. I'm getting some sort of ramping ability, or like draw 1 is a strong ability, but maybe something like draw 3 would be a broken ability, like Electric Moth, discard 1, draw 3. That's crazy when that goes off. Maximum Overhaul, pick up 3 from your stage, and you get a free build also from your hand. Like that's 2 broken abilities on that card. So those are some examples of, or Freezer Burn, for example. I get to deny all sorts of interaction. Anytime you play an ability, I can sacrifice a foundation, and now I get to cancel that interaction. So those are examples of broken abilities. They're way better than just good abilities. They're taking it to like almost a cheating level. These are cards that typically can be banned. Like everybody's calling for Twisting Azure Inferno to be banned. They've been calling for it ever since it was released a couple years back. And part of that is that it basically ignores progressive difficulty. And it gives +1 speed to all your future attacks. If you think about that, +1 to your checks, -1 to your rival's checks, basically meaning it doesn't count towards progressive. And, you know, that's a pretty common way to break a card. So let's look at some examples of cards in Attack on Titan that maybe are very good, but they're not like breaking the game. Switch to vertical maneuvering. 5 low 5. If it deals damage, ready 2 foundations with a difficulty of 1 or less. So it's like baby repeated 100%. We're getting to ready stuff, but it's only if it deals damage. And then it's, it's only 5 low 3. It does make a really good poke attack if you like poured a couple rifle arms into this. And now it's, I guess it says difficulty 1 or less. See, even then, like you're gated to specific foundations and not just your choice. Besiege, 3 mid 4 on a 3 diff, can only be blocked by cards with a printed block modifier of 3 or greater. That's really, really solid, but it's certainly not game breaking. Horrifying Realization, a spam foundation. This is one that multiple people told me to put in my top 10. Flip, each player discards a card and draws 1 card. If your rival discarded a foundation this way, they commit 1 foundation. Basically, this is like 1 difficulty Botan's coaching. Except now it's at form speed, so we can do it even before we play an attack, which is really, really nice. Because a draw is more powerful the earlier in your turn that you get to do it. The later in your turn, draw becomes much, much less powerful because you've already made most of the key decisions that are going to be turn definers. So the earlier you get to do it, the earlier you get to see information and then make those important decisions. But, flip to discard 1 and draw 1, that's fine. That's really good for a spam foundation. But we have 1,000,001 difficulty chaos foundations that say draw a card of some sort. And I'm doing this top 10 in terms of standard, not in terms of Attack on Titan Spotlight. So that could be pretty important to point out here. Let's take a look at my past top 10s to look at how I'm looking for universally good cards and broken cards, and I'm applying these 2 criteria. So if we go back a couple sets and look at Yu Yu Hakusho, this was my top 10, and holy cow, Yu Yu Hakusho was a cracked set. I could pick out 5 of these cards that in most other sets would be the best card in the set. If you're a beginner just now getting into the game and you want to get into standard competitive format, I highly, highly suggest going and picking up a box of Yu Yu Hakusho. There are so many staples and it's such a powerful set. We have Idun box all the way at number 10. And then my number 1 card in the set was Tray Size. And the reason for Tray Size was, hey, this is very universal. All you have to do is destroy Ready Foundation. Anybody can do this. And it's broken because Yu Yu Hakusho was the first time we were getting fundamentally free echo attacks. And that was something that was really, really scaring me from a design perspective. I think it ended up being fine, but we did see Tray Size be very, very powerful. We saw it be quite dominant in Mina 2, in the younger Toguro builds. It really, really helped push the death attack package up, and also alongside Battle Aura Release, which is just a very, very powerful card. 4 high 8, draw a card. That's getting pretty close to broken, but Armor of the Wolf is certainly a broken card. Walk the Dog being a 6 low 6, powerful 3, stun 1 on a 4 diff, that draws a card. That's nuts. Referee Jury taking the damage back to 4. Ice Sword Execution, hey, just commit all of your broken psyches. Your choice, and they have to commit all of them down. These were all very, very powerful cards that are breaking the game. I ultimately went with Tray Size at number 1 just because of that echo ability being completely free. The one card I missed on in this top 10 was Mop Strike. I had Mop Strike at like 11 through 15, somewhere in there. I thought Battle Aura Release was just a little better, and those were like the final attack that I was choosing between was, do I do Battle Aura Release or Mop Strike? Ended up leaving Mop Strike off. Mop Strike ended up being so good and so useful in those death attack packages that it got banned. So, I don't shoot 100% on these, but if I look back at this top 10, I'm pretty proud of myself. I think it was pretty accurate. And then we go to Girl Power. Girl Power, my top 3 were Black Abyss, Incubating, and Big Fist Bash. And I still think that's my top 3. Like, I haven't changed on that top 3 at all since then. Black Abyss made massive, massive competitive waves throughout Season 2. Big Fist Bash at the biggest competitive event of the season, St. Louis, over 160 plus players. We had multiple decks in top cuts using Big Fist Bash and Double Jumbo Fist. We had an all Hawks deck, and we had multiple Hawks Rodan decks using this all mids package with Big Fist Bash to pick things up. So I feel very vindicated there. The price on TCG Player was really low for where I expected that SR to be. I haven't checked the price in the last couple months, but if it's anything like it was pre-St. Louis, then it's an absolute steal, and go and buy them up. And then incubating just, hey, free and utterly free -1 speed on everything. If I had to make a change from my girl power top 10, I probably would put lightning rod in, maybe take out turbo speed dash or without a vision. But I show you these top 10s to give you an example of what I'm looking for. Universal and game breaking. And typically in a top 10 list, my numbers like 10 through 6, you can argue with me about. But once it gets to the top 5, I feel like I'm very, very sure of myself that these are going to be competitively dominant. Like I look back at this girl power top 5 and like maybe you could argue with me about condescending explanation, but that's still a game winner when it's in your stage. Just saying, hey, flip this attack. That is a broken ability. And then up here in Yu Yu Hakusho, walk the dog. People are calling for that to be banned. Ice Sword Execution, Tray Size. These are very, very powerful cards. So that was a very long introduction to my Attack on Titan top 10. Drum roll, please. We had a 300 card set. This was very, very difficult for me to do because a lot of Attack on Titan are cards that are good but not broken. Like, it's like the attacks themselves, for the most part, are pretty good. But when you look at them and you think, are they top 10 worthy? We don't have a lot of like Battle Aura releases and Tray Size, for example. And then the foundations, by and large, are worse than past sets. But with it being a 300 card set, there's still a lot of very, very strong foundations. This is the top 10 list that I've struggled with the most. This took me hours and hours to make these very difficult decisions on what to include and what to exclude. So at any point, if you think I'm putting something too high or you think I left something off, let me know in the comments below and I'd be very interested to discuss it. Coming in at number 10, I've got Determined Advance, 6 difficulty, 6 mid 6 on the Chaos symbol, EX3, Fury range. The speed and damage cannot be reduced below printed. Blitz, add the top card of your deck to your momentum. So we have 2 broken abilities here, and they're not broken by much, but it's enough. We're ramping a momentum for free, right? This is very similar to cards like Rejuvenating Smash that ramp a momentum, but on that, you have to discard a card, so you have to work for that. This is utterly free. We just play this, we get a momentum. Then the second broken ability is the speed and damage cannot be reduced below printed. You are not allowed to interact with my attack. That is very, very strong, especially when you're going against speed manipulation characters. In Spotlight, this is going to be like Irwin. In Standard, this is going to be like Rodan and Jin. Hey, you're going to have to block this on a 6. Rodan, if you want to block this with your combined firepower from discard, you're going to be blocking on a 9. If you check a 3 on that, you're going to have to commit 6 resources. Otherwise, you're going to eat at least 6 damage. Also, now you have to block this and it's going to be at least 6 speed. If you don't block it, this is going to go to my momentum. And now I got 2 momentum off of 1 attack and I dealt 6 damage. And it just has the EX3 of if I have a lot of momentum, it's like Rejuvenating Smash. You know, sometimes you just EX that thing to the moon and that's your game finisher. I think like this is certainly not crazy. In the past, being 6 difficulty might have been too much of an obstacle to overcome. But these days, when we have characters like Godzilla that love you to play 5 difficulty or higher attack packages, that can be pretty nice. I mean, heck, in Godzilla, this is like a 4 diff, right? Because you snap the momentum and now you can spend that momentum for +2 to a check. So it's like a 4 diff, 6 mid 9 that they have to block being at least 6 speed. That's very good for Godzilla. Also, we live in a world now with City Rampage. So if you play City Rampage and then you play this, if you check a 5, you checked it, right? Because that 5 check becomes a 7. So being a 6 difficulty is not as bad as what it used to be. We're getting a momentum. They can't interact with it. For those reasons, it's here at number 10. Just barely made it in. This was the one that I debated with myself the most about. Coming up at number 9, I've got a foundation, a common foundation, Smiling Death. 2 difficulty, remove after this card is destroyed, flip 1 rival foundation. This is on the death symbol. That's a very, very low barriered entry after this foundation is destroyed. The death symbol has a million different ways to destroy it. We can form Risky Encounter. We can use Immortal Shapeshifter. We can use Go for the Win. There's so many different times. This does not say during the enhanced step. That's what really makes this powerful is even on form destroy things like Go for the Win, it's still going to be online or like Risky Encounter. And so this is like apathetic, right? Apathetic was a very, very powerful foundation in My Hero Academia set 1. It just said flip a rival foundation. Well, this is basically that. And then it's also like split body control and girl power. But split body control said after an attack is blocked. Or maybe it was even after your attack is blocked. I can't quite remember, but it definitely had more limitations on it than this one. And split body control has been a very, very good card that's been in a lot of competitive decks. So I see Smiling Death. Yes, this is not the most broken ability, but it is a game-winning ability. It's a sneaky game-winning ability. Hey, if I can flip down my rival's reset, if I can flip down their last piece of speed hate, maybe that's all I need to find game. Or if I can flip down their best offensive foundation, maybe this gives me a fighting chance on defense. So while it's not a broken ability, it is a game-winning ability, and it's at a very, very low barrier. It's on the death symbol. I think it's going to see a lot of play. Coming in at number 8, we have our only secret rare on here. I've already talked about this ad nauseum on my secret rare tier list, so I'm not going to rehash everything here. Basically, this is going to be a 5 high 6. If it deals damage, your next one ignores progressive. I've already talked about ignoring progressive difficulty is a broken ability. You're cheating a fundamental game mechanic. It does have to deal damage, so that's why it's down here at number 8. I said in my tier list, in my secret rare tier list video, that I wasn't sure any of my secret rares were going to make the top 10. But as I looked at the Attack on Titan cards, this one managed to sneak in. Again, go watch that past video if you want a detailed look at this card. Coming in at number 7, Mikasa defeats the female Titan. We have another just common foundation. So like I said, the foundations in general in Attack on Titan are worse than past sets. But with a 300 card set, we're going to have a few standouts, and they're coming in at the commons. 2 diff, 4 check, response flip. After you block an attack, that attack deals no damage. Okay, for those of you who have been playing the game for the last couple years when My Hero Academia set 1 was legal, Wall Cling was a beloved card that was very, very strong. It said enhance flip. If you block this attack, it deals no damage. This is basically Wall Cling reprinted, but now it's reprinted at response speed, and response speed is much, much better. That was the big downside of Wall Cling. You had to telegraph that you were going to be blocking that attack, and now your rival has that information of they've used their Wall Cling, and they can adjust the stats accordingly with that telegraphed information. In this game, it's very, very important that you do not telegraph information like that before you're done with the enhanced step. That's going to give your rival an advantage over you. So this is a better version of Wall Cling. It's also on the air symbol, which means that all versions of Rodan can use this. So if you're running a Void Rodan with combined firepower, you can now use firepower to completely block anything. And this also is like pseudo throw hate. So very, very powerful. It's almost the exact same stats as Wall Cling. Wall Cling was a 2-4 with a 3 high block. This is a 3 low block, but its response speed, it's even better. Wall Cling was a very common foundation in almost any sort of control character. So that's why I brought up Rodan here, because that's the type of character that would love this foundation. You absolutely cannot take a lot of damage. You're a 7-hander, but you have a lot of card economy. And so you need to just make sure that you are finding the right block zones. And if you can make firepower the right block zone, that's awesome. Coming in at number 6, Unexpected Outcomes. This is my only card in my top 10 with the difficulty above a 6. We have a 9 difficulty attack, 4 check. This is a new type of card coming out in Attack on Titan. These very high difficulty, but they check a 4 attacks. 10 mid, 8, 1 mid block. Blitz, your rival reveals their hand. Okay, that's broken. Remove an attack card revealed this way. After this attack resolves, you may flip it and try to play it as a copy of the removed card. It should say card. You know, what can you do? There's always going to be some typos. It's Universus. As your next form. Okay, there's 3 broken abilities on this card all in one. First off, you can look at your rival's hand. You know their block zones. You know the attacks that they're sculpting so that you know the block zones that you need to hold. If you don't kill them this turn and you need to play some more defense, you get to remove an attack. You know, they can't even add that attack back somehow. Like Hold Hostage says if they deal damage, they get to add it back. It's just removed. It's just gone. We've seen a lot of decks become pretty popular, especially on Chaos and Void, where they're removing all your attacks. So Here's another way where we can just remove an attack. And then lastly, we get to play it as that attack. So sometimes we're going to be playing attacks that were never meant to be played on our symbol. Some very, very powerful attacks. Like if I look at your hand and I see a walk the dog, then maybe I get to play a walk the dog even though I'm not on those symbols. That's going to be kind of crazy. There's 3 broken abilities on this. The reason it's down at number 6 and not in my top 5 is simply because it's a 9 diff. I don't know how much these 9 difficulty, 10 difficulty attacks are really going to find play in standard format. So that's holding it back just a little bit, but undeniably strong. It's almost just as good defensively as offensively. Like when I play this, hey, I got to look at your hand and I got to remove your best attack. Now I don't have to worry about that on my turn. You're just going to have to raw draw the attacks that you need to kill me. And sometimes, hey, you get to play it as that attack and it's really, really good. I'm really not too worried about like the inconsistency of finding great attacks. Even if my rival showed me 2 foundations, I would still consider this a very, very good ability because I got to see their hand, and now I have perfect knowledge of their block zones and their block modifiers, and so that's still very good, and it's just good stats. You know, this wasn't understated. This is still 2 stats per difficulty, and it checks a 4, so it increases our deck stability in that way. Like, I don't think this is a card that you run 3 or 4 of in your deck. That's also another reason it's not in my top 5. I want my top 5 to be cards that you really, really want to see and play at a higher ratio than just a 1 or 2. But this is going to be a 1 of or a 2 of in a lot of my decks. It's on the infinity symbol, which is another thing that this has going for. It's just the breadth of decks that can potentially play this card. Okay, so that is my top. That's my first 5. Now I'm going into my top 5. So like I said, I think you could argue with me about 10 through 6. I had to make a lot of choices. This took me hours and hours to make. Of just like, well, maybe this is a little bit better. No, I think this is a little bit better. But now that we're in the top 5, I think we're in the zone where it would take a very, very strong argument to change my mind on any of these. These are extremely strong. So let's kick it off. Number 5, strategic maneuver, an action here. 0 difficulty action, checks a 4, 2 mid-block. Remove, choose an asset in your discard pile. If that card's printed difficulty is 2 or less, you may discard a card. If you do, build the chosen card. Otherwise, add the chosen card to your hand. Okay, this is a kind of confusing form ability on first read. Basically, what this is saying is that at minimum, you just transform this into an asset from your discard pile. You don't lose a card in your hand, right? It just transforms into it. So let's say we're playing a deck with like Cape of No Return. That's a very, very powerful defensive asset. It just says remove a rival attack from the game that they got to play. So let's say I draw my hand. Doesn't look like I'm going to be able to kill my rival. I really need to play some defense. I have a strategic maneuver. I just form. I say I'll go grab my Cape of No Return, and then this removes. I lost no cards in hand. My strategic maneuver just became a copy of the best asset in my discard pile. Assets a lot of times are game winners, getting them out onto my stage. And then this says, if you did want to build it, you can just immediately build it by discarding a card. So now you have lost this card in your hand and another card in hand to build an asset from your discard pile. And you would do that, I think, if you're going to win the game by doing so. Like if I build a vertical maneuvering equipment, this is the difference between me winning and losing. If I build a Grenadier Bracers, right, this shares with Grenadier Bracers. If I build this in, then I'm going to be able to do a massive amount of damage and win the game. There's just so many things that this can turn into. I like at minimum, just saying, hey, give me my best asset in my discard pile. That's kind of crazy. And then just on a kill turn, I get to free build something. I get to free build an asset into my stage. I have a hard time seeing how this is not top 5. I think this is very, very broken. Good for all the asset decks out there. Coming in at number 4, I have Farewell Between Friends. This attack is pretty similar to Unexpected Outcomes. I think it's a little bit better because it's only a 5 diff, but it does check a 2. So that's the downside of this card, but I think it's by far the best 2-check in the set. We've got 8 2-checks coming out. I showed one at the beginning, Rallied Assault. I felt it was just a little too niche. Farewell Between Friends, though, I think you could play this in almost any deck on its symbols. Any character with the order symbol that can play this order attuned card. For mid 6, your rival reveals their hand, a broken ability. Choose a card revealed this way. Your rival cannot play copies of the chosen card until the start of your next turn. So if you wanted to, you can just say, hey, you can't play your mid block, right? And now I'm going to get some damage in. But if they show you their hand, you can take the card that you're most scared of, like an Armor of the Wolf, for example, and say, hey, you can't even play copies of that against me. I played this the other day. Somebody flipped their hand, and it was like 2 copies of Instant Shining Flash were in their hand. So it was like, yeah, you can't play Instant Shining Flash. Like, that was the best defensive thing I could have done. Like, they showed me a hand of 3 attacks, and I got to say, on your turn, you're not allowed to play 2 out of those 3. You might as well just review it out. Review out an attack, and then draw, and now you have a useless card in your hand on your turn because you can't even play that second Instant Shining Flash. Like, it's a very, very powerful offensive ability to keep certain cards from being able to be used against you, and a very powerful defensive ability so that you don't die on the next turn. Like if you're scared of, for example, risky encounters, there's going to be a lot of death risky encounters decks out there. If they have one in their hand, you can say risky encounter, and now they can't even use them from their discard pile on their turn. So Farewell Between Friends coming in as my best 2-check. Now on to my top 3. I have a Foundation, Sacrifice for the Cause, 3 difficulty, 5-check on the fire symbol. Discard a card. This attack gets X damage. X equals the block modifier of the discarded card. We have 2 foundations right now that are on the banned list where you discard a card to get some amount of stats. We have Snack Time, where you got to get stun 1 and 1 speed, and 1 with Nature, where it was effectively 2 speed. Your rival's block modifier got +2. So basically the same thing as +2 speed, sometimes a little bit better on very, very niche circumstances. So those cards are on the ban list, and this is basically that except for damage. And sometimes it's even better, like discard a 3 block modifier and I get 3 damage, or discard something with a 5 block modifier. What is that life one, that life Deku one that has a 5 that says when it's discarded, you also get to draw? So now any of those characters that get access to that and the fire symbol now get to discard, hey, respond, draw, and I got 5 damage. That's already a very, very good enhance. But that's not what makes this card in my top 3. That's just what makes it baseline good. What makes it broken is the response. Sacrifice. After your rival plays an ability that would reduce the damage of an attack, cancel it. Notice that that does not say a non-character ability. So, hey, Mirio, you wanted to reduce the damage of my attack to 0? Too bad. I have Sacrifice for the Cause out. Elder Toguro, you wanted to swap the speed and damage of my attack so that you could 0 out my damage? Not anymore. This even works on abilities like that swap. I think this even takes down the Elder Toguro super combo where they use Sports Festival Champ, right? They say my damage cannot be like modified by rival effects or something. And then they make the damage massive using all their combined fire powers. And then they Elder Toguro to swap it. And even though it wouldn't reduce the damage, because it was an ability that could, or that would, if it wasn't for Sports Festival Champ, it would reduce the damage, then I think it still cancels it. So I'm not exactly sure on that one. If you're a rules shark and you know better than me, tell me in the comments. But the fact that this doesn't say non-character ability, very, very powerful. You can protect yourself from any sort of damage reduction with this card and stage. And like I said, the enhance was already really, really good. Discarding a card in standard format is not a cost. There is so much card draw. It's not a big deal to discard a 3 block mod foundation and get +3. And that +3 damage could be all the difference between finding lethal and having to pass back. That is my number 1 foundation in the set. Now at number 2, I have an asset, Vertical Maneuvering Equipment. This is on the infinity symbol. Anybody can play this. You basically get to steal Marco's abilities. Or not Marco, Jean's abilities. Spend a momentum. This attack gets +3 or -3 speed. You may change its zone. That's nuts. everything gets 1 instance of EX3 or -3 speed. I didn't have to commit any foundations, and I just gave -3 speed. I really like how we get to turn our offense, right? If our attacks deal damage, we get to now have momentum, and now our offense turns into great defense. I really, really like that. It's going to reward you for pushing through some damage and getting some poke attacks in, and now we get to play better defense because of it. You made change its zone is just nutty. So now in Attack on Titan Spotlight especially, that's going to be really important, where you might not have a very good block zone spread compared to when you have a massive card pool like in standard formats. And then we get this enhanced commit. This attack gets 2 damage. If it deals damage to a backup, ready this. So we can kind of ignore that second sentence for standard format, but hey, on your last attack, commit it for +2 damage. It did not need that bottom enhanced to just be super good, but it's here. And again, you can just build this off of strategic maneuver when you need it. You can just go, let's go back. Just go and free build your vertical maneuvering equipment. I suspect almost every Spotlight deck will have 1 or 2 of this in it. It's just going to be an auto include. And then I suspect a lot of standard decks to also have 1 or 2 of this in it. And now we arrive at my number 1 card. I guarantee you could probably predict this if you paused the video and took 30 seconds to think about it. I think that my number 1 card needs to be banned. I think it should have been banned preemptively, in all honesty. I do not think this card should be allowed to exist. I think it's going to completely warp competitive play. And if it's still around in Atlanta, it's going to be like one of the number 1 things that you have to prepare for. It's going to be everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. It is Risky Encounter. 5 difficulty, 4 high, 4. I made a whole video. I actually got to do an exclusive reveal of this card. I think like a month back. I made a whole video on it on like my initial thoughts. But now I've actually played against this card a lot, and I've played it a lot. And I can say that it's every bit as unfair as I first suspected when I laid eyes on it. Stun 1, 4 high, 4. If your rival has more foundations than you, this attack is X damage. X equals the difference. And then you can form from the discard pile, sacrifice 3 foundations. Try to play this attack from your discard pile as your next form. It gets -2 difficulty. This is just a 3 difficulty attack that you can summon up from your discard pile at any time. That's nuts. And then it just becomes like a 10 damage move as your finisher. So many times it's just like, well, if I check a 5 on a Risky Encounter from my discard pile, I win the game. Like, let's just see, right? Because it's 3 difficulty. So even if you have like 3 cards in your card pool, hey, all you need to do is pass a 6 check and you're going to win the game. And that form feeds into the Blitz ability really well. Sacrifice 3 foundations, by the way, not hard. That's not a high cost, especially when we get to ramp foundations so much and we can just blow up our committed foundations. Nobody cares about blowing up committed foundations on a turn they're going to win the game. Like, oh no, I finished the game at 2 foundations and my opponent finished the game at 12 foundations. Who cares? You won. That's just not a cost. It's a cost if they happen to have a Genkai's Guidance in hand that you didn't see coming, right? And then you form up your Risky Encounter, they Genkai's Guidance it. No, then even then it's not a cost because they had to destroy 3 foundations for Genkai's Guidance. Yeah, this thing, you're even, right? You and your rival both had to sacrifice 3 to make it happen. So this thing is just super, super unfair. I think you have to find a way to get them out of your rival's discard pile with cards like Deception Dagger, right? Removing something from their discard pile, because it just means that like every death character now gets access to just a free couple of attacks at the end. Hey, it's a weapon, Toga 3. A lot of times Toga 3s lose because they just didn't draw enough gas. I can say that like probably 40% of the games that I won against the Toga 3, if they had drawn more gas, they probably win against me. And so now they just will never run out of gas. Mina 2, hey, yeah, I'll just form this up. It's 7, 10 damage. And if it hits you, you're going to burn for like 6. Right. And I don't even have, it's a 3 difficulty and I'm not even going to be playing it on progressive because like everything in my card pool is flipped face down. Like the only cost that this card has is that it's a 5 diff when you play it from your hand, but just don't play it from your hand. It's a 1 high block. Keep it for defense. It's a great defensive block. Use like Botan's coaching on the death symbol. Discard 1, draw 1. There's right, like there's a lot of just discard abilities to draw. You can use it on defense. You can just review it out. You know, if you had it going into your turn, just, hey, review that out, draw it. It's always better in the discard pile. So just draw up. You know, typically you don't want to review out your attacks. With Risky Encounter, you always do. It's just, I think it's going to be extremely format warping. I don't know how this didn't get hit with some sort of 2-check. I don't know why it said it gets -2 difficulty. Maybe it would have been fine if it said -1 difficulty. Maybe it would have been fine if it said sacrifice 4 foundations. This is not enough negative things to not run this card. It's just nuts. It's a 3 difficulty, 10 damage move. You can just grab at any time whenever your rival runs out of cards in hand. Like I've been playing it a lot in Death Levi. You do your dual needle lunge ambush thrust combo, right? You play like 5 attacks on almost no progressive, and then you just finish off with some risky encounters, whatever you wanted in between. You committedly fight to pick something. I mean, you just like laughed at progressive difficulty. So this is a broken mechanic because you're playing from outside your hand. You are ignoring progressive difficulty. And yeah, basically you're just playing from outside your hand, something that should not be allowed. I'm probably going on too long, but I'm being serious when I say this attack, in my opinion. Now you can argue with me, and I encourage you to do so in the comments because I love a good argument. But in my opinion, this card needed to have been banned yesterday. It's very, very unfair, and it's going to be very warping. But hey, you know, I said that, like, I almost said that about Tray Size, and Tray Size ended up being fine. So maybe I'm wrong. So here's my top 10 looking back on it. Determined Advance at number 10. Smiling Death at number 9. Mist of Despair at number 8. Mikasa Defeats the Female Titan at number 7. Unexpected Outcomes at number 6. Strategic Maneuver at number 5. Farewell Between Friends at number 4. And my top 3, Sacrifice for the Cause, Vertical Maneuvering Equipment, and Risky Encounter. What do you think about my top 10? Do you think I'm crazy to rank any of these this high? Do you think I'm crazy to leave off a card you love? Like Pressing the Advantage, you know? I just didn't feel like it was quite enough to justify the 2-check. It was quite universal and broken enough to get in. It's certainly broken. But Farewell Between Friends was the 2-check that I felt was the most universal of all of them. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on my top 10 list. What are your top 10 lists? Like I said, I'm never 100% on these. I kind of missed on Lightning Rod and Mop Strike in my previous couple lists. But overall, I think I did pretty well. Keep your eyes out for some videos this week. I'm doing a top 10 list on cards from previous sets that are made better in Attack on Titan. So because of all these new strategies coming with Attack on Titan, what kind of cards in the past didn't get run that much that might now actually be mainboarded in a major competitive event? So I'm going to be coming out with that video. I've also got a Spotlight Hans deck profile coming out. And I think I'm going to make a whole video on why you should play Attack on Titan Spotlight. I don't see a lot of people playing Spotlight. I try and find people to play Spotlight with on Tabletop Simulator, and most everybody just has standard decks. I'm telling you guys, I think the Spotlight format is going to be a lot of fun. My LGS is doing both of our local qualifiers as Spotlight format, so it's a format that I'm going to be basically only playing for the next month, and I think that you should too. And if you skip it, I think you're missing out on a really, really fun time and an interesting like side quest in Universus history. So that's it for me. Keep your eyes out for videos coming. I appreciate you guys. I'll see you next time.